Noah was born 1642 Anno Mundi, and he was righteous in his generation. By now, the whole line of Seth was wicked. God is only going to save Noah, his wife, Noah's 3 sons, and their wives. And when Noah turned somewhere around Noah's 480th birthday, you notice in Genesis chapter 6, God says that he's not going to contend with man since man is mortal and their years are 120. That's a 120-year countdown. That doesn't mean everyone's only going to live to be 120, because I believe it's Eusebius, Josephus, both talk about this, saying that it was a 120-year countdown, as opposed to people are only going to live as long as 120, because, Abraham's way after the flood, and he lived to be 175. So it doesn't really have to do with that. So God came and talked to him. He's got 120 years, presumably, to build the ark and to get everything ready. This is why when Bill Nye is debating with Ken Ham about the Noah's flood, and Bill Nye says, well, my family, we're all shipwrights, or shipwrights, or whatever you call them, shipwrights, and we've been building boats for generations. Noah didn't have any experience. He had 120 years and God's guidance to build that boat. I trust in that, and cover it in pitch on the inside and out. I think it's ludicrous to say that Noah and his sons couldn't build the ark in 120 years with God's help. Exactly.
It was big. That's why it took so long. Yeah.
But some takeaways are, we don't fully know the geography of the pre-flood world. That's something to ponder. The water is going to come from above and the water is going to come from below. That's going to change the face of the earth forever. We're not 100% sure that all the generations are accounted for. Are there 10? I think so. But for all we know, Adam and Seth and Enosh and all these guys, maybe these are the highlights. I don't know. It could be even more thousands of years. I tend to think not. I think we've got it, but I don't know. Maybe we don't. We don't know the extent of their population, nor their distribution on the face of the earth, nor do we know what the face of the earth looked like. So were they as far and wide as we are today? I don't know. Technology, we know that they had farming, cities, metallurgy, musical instruments, shepherding, astronomy, and construction. So they had some technology, but we don't know the extent of their technology, but we know that they had technology. And we don't know if any trace of the pre-flood world has survived. Now, there have been some amazing archaeological discoveries, like underwater pyramids off the coast of Japan that could not have been above ground for 10,000 years or something like that, according to the scientists' estimates. But underwater pyramids. There's no way to do that unless you have scuba. Maybe they had scuba gear, or maybe the water levels were lower. Who knows? So it's fascinating. I don't know if anything survived. There's an interesting story in Josephus where he says that Adam and Seth erected 2 pillars, one of stone and one of brick, saying that the earth is going to be destroyed by fire and by water, but they didn't know which was which. Josephus said in his day, the one of stone was still there in the land of Syriad. And guess what? Because people don't really focus on this or care about ancient history, I couldn't find anything of talking about it that wasn't later than the 1700s. And that was written by a heretic. Anyway, there's discrepancies that need to be addressed. I know it's freaky for you to hear that I personally don't trust the dates that are in Genesis that are coming from the Masoretic text. I trust the Septuagint, and I trust what Josephus said, and I trust what Eusebius said, because these guys are way older than the Reformation. The choice was made at the Reformation for good reasons to say, well, we want a Hebrew text to translate from, and then we've been doing it ever since. Does that make it right? Again, this is not an issue of changing doctrines or finding something else. It's just an issue of was he 230 or was he 130? And if the most ancient scholars of the church and of Judaism say that what the Septuagint numbers are is what they actually are, then I am more inclined to believe them over some later historian. let's talk about the state of the world. Now, we covered how there were fallen angels that were somehow having children with women and that the whole world was becoming corrupt. God's Spirit, it says in Genesis 6:3, God's Spirit was striving with mankind. That's what he says. He's striving with mankind because mankind has become rebellious and corrupt. And now God is striving with them. And there were great tyrants on the earth. That's what we get from 6:4, is that there were tyrants on the earth. And the way that it is stated is like this. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Now that sounds like strong men. Maybe they're having a strongman competition. Those Hebrew terms for mighty men are referring to tyrants. Okay? This is not a good term of, hey, let's go watch it's like the Olympics. And even the context here is a negative context. Something bad is going on. And that whole idea of the men of renown, the heroes of old, this is things that really happened that were then glorified by the post-flood world into mythology. And so there were tyrants on the earth, great tyrants on the earth. And the wickedness of man was great. And every intent of his thoughts, okay, his actions are evil, but the intent of his heart is evil, continually evil, wicked all the time. We need to get a good understanding of what this pre-flood world was like. Now, I love those paintings that many artists have done of the flood and Noah and all that, but there's a misunderstanding of people. Noah, let us in! They weren't like that. Okay, they had a long time to repent. 120 years they had to repent.
Yep.
Okay? But they weren't like that. We're not even this bad in this day and age. Now, there are some people that are this bad. But they're a minority. This is the majority. Noah alone was righteous in his generation. So that should tell you how wicked these people are. We should not de-emphasize their wickedness, because the judgment that happens to them is equal to their wickedness. And it is just. It is just because they were so wicked. You take the most liberal judge you want. If they saw the things that these people were doing, they would say, guilty! Yeah, kill them! I would assume, because the things that these people were doing are even worse than what the Canaanites were doing, and the law gives us a good understanding of what the Canaanites were doing, and the Canaanites were doing things I don't even want to talk about. And not just because my son's here. He already knows some of it. Wicked. Things that none of us even wants to see or think about. But it's the thought of their heart. The intention was continually evil. The whole earth was corrupt, and all flesh had corrupted their ways. That's talking about all mankind. So this is a universal problem. It's not, oh, that country's bad and this country's pretty. No, they're all evil, all of them. There's only going to be 8 that are preserved from the pre-flood world. And guess what? We are their offspring.
Jeremy, Noah was the most righteous, but Noah wasn't really that righteous. He just happened to be better than all the... He was still a sinful guy.
I would say this of Noah. The chances are, in terms of if we wanted to measure up people in human standards, I would say Noah was probably more righteous than any of us, but he was not as righteous maybe as Seth was. I don't know, though. The earth is filled with violence. Josephus wrote of the line of Cain is that one generation was more violent than the next, and that they were hard on those who would not go quickly into violence if somebody had done you wrong. It's like if you had the mind of a child and the body of a powerful adult, and you were just angry for a split second and you just kill somebody, you know, because you're just do it. That was mine. Bam, you're dead. Mankind, so this is the thing. God said here in chapter 6, verse 3, that mankind was going to have 120 years left. And this is the way that the early church fathers took it. God isn't saying in the midst of this story about the flood, oh, by the way, men are only going to live to be 120 now. Because men continue to live longer than 120 for over 1,000 years. They're going to do that. So the idea here is that they have 120 years. Now Noah, we know from Scripture, is a preacher of righteousness. Yep. And so he may have been preaching this whole time. Josephus says that he was talking to these tyrants and these other people, trying to implore them to stop with their behavior. And when he then began to fear for his own life, he departed from them. But this guy Noah has 120 years to prepare the ark. Mankind has 120 years to repent. I mean, imagine. We know God. You have to know God's character. Look at the mercy here. We're talking about people that are worse than anybody you can think of. Or somebody that you can think of is like what everybody was like, okay? A sociopath, a psycho, right? They have 120 years of God's grace.
Yeah, he's preaching that whole time.
Yes. And God has extended grace to them. We get a similar picture, and if we fast forward to Genesis 15, when God is talking to Abraham, and he says, Abraham, your people, your descendants that come after you are going to be enslaved. But after 400 years, they're going to come back here because the sin of the Amorite has not reached its full measure. God was having grace on the Canaanite people. He was using the Amorites since they were the most powerful in the land of Canaan. He was using them to stand for the whole of Canaan. So God extends His grace to wicked people. He gives them time to repent. Okay? God is still showing His grace here as well. God watches mankind. He's watching them, but He doesn't just see their actions. He sees their intentions, right? Man looks on the outside, but God sees the inside. So He knows what their thoughts are, and He sees what their actions are, and God weighs them in His just scales and determines that they should die. God is grieved over mankind. When it says in your translations that He repented, it wasn't that God said, well, I'm turning away from mankind forever and I'm going to kill them all. Okay, it's this idea that God is in great sorrow and grieved that mankind has become like this. He's striving with them. Now look, let's also talk about God's sovereign plan. God also knew that this was going to happen. And Noah knew, because Noah was a part of it as well. God will blot out mankind, and this is interesting, and the land animals, and the air animals, the birds. Fascinating. So his wrath is also to kill animals. Now that should give you somewhat of a picture of what could have been going on, since all flesh is corrupt. The animals themselves have been taught by man also to be corrupted. Okay? I don't know the extent of it, but you can understand if it is so bad that God wants to kill the animals as well. Men can train animals to do terrible things. I mean, we do know about dog fights, right? We also know about sweet dogs that you want to jump up in your lap and lick your face. Do you want a dog-fighting dog to jump up in your lap and get near your face? No, you don't. God said that He was going to destroy all flesh on the earth, which is significant. You can think of earth there as being on the land, because those are the ones who are going to die. The fish are not going to be the ones who... He doesn't mention the fish and saying, I will kill all the fish also. God commanded Noah to build an ark, and to build it covered in pitch on the inside and the outside. You know what that pitch does? It waterproofs it. Because if you've got an ark that's just a box, it's going to let water in. So God said that He was going to destroy the earth with the flood waters. Okay, and this is an important thing to understand. The purpose of the flood is to destroy the earth, which by itself, God says, I will destroy the earth. That is hyperbole. God does not destroy the whole earth, as in, I always think of, anybody see Star Wars?
Yes.
The first one?
Yes.
When the Death Star blows up? at the end. I think of that as destroying the earth. God here is saying, I will destroy the earth, but his reference here is destroying those which have breathed the breath of life that are not on the ark. That is the purpose of the flood, okay? And that is something we need to understand. God's going to fulfill his purpose in destroying them with the flood waters. But God did say that he would establish his covenant with Noah and his wife and Noah's sons and their wives. So God is not fully destroying all life. God is preserving a remnant, which is something else that God does. This is his character. He always preserves a remnant. Even through the end times, there will be a remnant. Even now, there is a remnant of Israel that believes. Even into the future, there will be Israel that believes. And they see him coming. They will believe. Those that are left. So God said that only Noah was righteous in his time. Which is significant. This lone righteous man, I mean, we've got each other. You know, we can stand next to each other and encourage each other and say, this isn't right, and we need to act this way, and these are the, you need to stop doing this, and I need help with this. Noah's by himself. So he's truly alone. And yeah, God preserved a remnant. I already said that. Now the interesting thing is, he wants pairs of every animal. But for the unclean animals, and then for the unclean animals, he wants 7 pairs.
For the clean animals.
For the clean. For the unclean animals, 2. For the clean animals, 7. Why do you think that is?
For sacrifice.
All right, fine. Sacrifice. You got it. It's an A crowd. Everyone gets an A. Okay, the ark itself. I love these cutesy little arks. I put a slash through it because, this is cute for kids. You know what? I don't even think it's cute for kids. I always, whenever we had the children's Bible, I would always tell my kids, this is not the size of the ark. And I would show them something that is the size of the ark. So this is just trying to be cute. This is reality. The ark was massive. A cubit. So we get the measurement of ark in terms of cubits. A cubit is your elbow to the top of your middle finger. But there's a standard cubit, and with Moses writing Genesis, we think that probably he's using the cubit that the Israelites were using, which would be maybe around 18 inches, could be as high as 20.7 inches, something like that. Okay, for 1 cubit. 1 cubit. The ark is 300 cubits long, and just for the sake of argument, I'm using an 18-inch cubit. So the ark is 450 feet long. That is like a 45-story building, okay, that's on its side. It's almost a tenth of a mile driving, okay. It's 1.5 football fields.
Well, I was going to say 1.5 football field.
It is huge. It's not this, where am I going to shove those elephants are big. And hippos? Man, you really got to cram them in there, right? It's 50 cubits wide. That's 75 feet wide. That's like a 7-story building. A 7-story building wide, okay, on its side. The 30 cubits high is like a 4-story building. It is a massive structure. It is something along these lines and nothing like this, cute though it may be.
So how many square feet inside? You're a realtor. How many?
Oh, how many? The internal square footage?
Well, there was
3 floors.
3 floors, and there was like 33,000 square feet per floor.
I'm an Excel fiend. You know what Excel is?
It does it for you.
Yeah. So I would stop right now and try to, but here's the other thing. What is the shape? So we got to get some geometry in it too. Because some people have it ship-shaped like this, what we see. Others have it box-shaped. That wasn't clear. But it is finished with an unknown number of rooms, booths for the animals to be in, cages. Maybe not cage, but a little room for them. There's 3 decks. There's the lower deck, middle deck, and the upper deck, the third deck, and then the outside. Okay, so there's 3 internal decks filled with rooms for the animals, and for the provisions, and for Noah. The animals. Here's a fascinating thing. Julius Africanus, an early church father, wrote in his 5 books of the chronography, looking at all these different ancient sources, he said that Noah put baby animals, firstlings, onto the ark.
That would make sense.
Wouldn't that make a lot of sense?
The Lord brought them in.
Yeah, God would have, of course. But if it's young animals, they're going to take up less space. Also, we need to think about, people say, well, how many animals were on the, look at how many animals that are on the earth today. You couldn't possibly put all those animals on the ark. And they're probably right. I'd say they're probably 100% right. We would need a much bigger ark today because of speciation. Speciation is just when there's, within a species itself, it starts to develop characteristics that are in agreement with whatever their surroundings are. They start to adapt, and then they become a new species. Or there's even a defect. There's an American curl cat. American curl cat. It's this cat that has these flipped ears, and it's kind of cool looking, and it's a cute cat. And the thing about it is, the first American curl cat was first seen in 1981. It was a genetic defect, and that cat passed its traits on to its litter. It is a dominant trait, but there were no American curl cats on the ark. They didn't even come around yet. Think of how many different breeds of dog we have. They make new breeds every year. People get creative. How about a Chihuahua Rottweiler? So we have to go back, scientifically speaking, and strip away all these breeds and all these different species that have, or the speciation that's happened within a certain animal group, and then come down to something that is like the king, the representative of, okay? Or the two representatives of. So, which means there's a lot fewer animals. And you can play with baby lions and tigers. Probably for a good year. Maybe not by the end of that year. Speaking of dinosaurs, were there dinosaurs on the ark? Who here will say with 100% certainty that there were dinosaurs on the ark?
How about 90 plus?
Richard Dawkins was asked, what is the chance that there's no God? He said 99%. So he's not even a full atheist. So he's a 1% theist.
1%er.
So even if it's 90-something percent that dinosaurs are on the ark, there's still a 10% or 5% chance that they were not on the ark. So the reason we would think that dinosaurs are on the ark is because we know for certain the age of the earth. Right? Do we know for certain the age of the earth?
No.
Oh boy. Okay, I agree. In fact, let me tell you, the earliest church fathers also did not agree that they knew the age of the earth. Now they talk about from the time of Adam, but for the days of creation, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but the earliest church fathers, what was handed down to them is that each day of creation was 1,000 years.
To God, 1,000 years
Is as a day, yeah.
But that's literal. It could be more.
It's a simile. He's right. It's a simile. And if you look at the Greek word that's used there, it is a like comparison. It's hos is the name, the word. And it is a like comparison. So a day to the Lord is like 1,000 years. With God, and some of them wrote, we're talking about God with respect to time, and there is no time, so nobody knows how old the earth is. And it's amazing that they would say these sorts of things back then, because there wasn't any big argument like what we have today. So, if there were dinosaurs on the ark, then probably it was 6 literal days of creation. If there were no dinosaurs on the ark and the dinosaurs had been extinct, then it's unknown amount of time for the days of creation. After all, it is with respect to God and His timing, and He lives outside of time and space, so what is time to Him when He's creating? And if what they say is true, it is a God day, then who knows how long of a time it was? Which would leave open the door to, how about quadrillions of years? We'll show them. No, it's not millions, it's quadrillions. Now, I'm not going to stand on any of those. I'm not going to say the earth is millions of years or thousands of years. I'm going to say, I don't know.
Right.
So all of these early church fathers, and I'll just point out a few. Barnabas was a disciple of the disciples. This isn't Barnabas in the Bible. Irenaeus was a disciple of Polycarp, who was a disciple of John. And Hippolytus was Irenaeus' disciple. Cyprian, Lactantius, and Victorinus all say the same thing. Justin Martyr all say the same thing. So, you know what? I'm inclined to agree with them in the fact that we don't know, and so I'm not even going to worry about it. So whether there were dinosaurs on the ark or not, I'm just going to say this, okay? No offense to Ken Ham. I think it's foolishness to take a stand on it. However, if I were to make an art place myself, I would say maybe there were dinosaurs, but we have no way of knowing. I would want to make sure that the world understood. I'm not taking a stance. I can't. You know why I can't take a stance? Because I don't have enough info. Yeah, I know. There's the theropod, the three-toed footprint overtop the man footprint or something, showing that dinosaurs and man coexisted. Possibly. They may have. A behemoth and Leviathan in the book of Job. Maybe dinosaurs. I don't know. Where are they now? Why did they die? I don't know. I mean, yeah, there's all sorts of theories, and we could sit here and talk about it till we're blue in the face. But let's go on. Here's another one for, oh ye, Cypress Bible Church attenders and members. Johnny Miller, who was pastor here from 1979 to 1983, wrote a phenomenal book whose conclusion is, I don't know, in terms of how old the earth is. But it's worth reading. It's in the beginning. We misunderstood. And Johnny Miller, I'd read it a long time ago. I think he also brought this point up as well. And I don't want to stomp on your heartfelt beliefs that the earth was created in 6 literal days. You may be right. How old was that wine that Jesus made from the water? Now, if we were to test it, it was the best, yeah. But if we were to test it, how old would someone have to conclude that it is? Because we know wine is an aging process. It doesn't happen overnight. So who knows? Who knows? But I'm not trying to stamp on it. It might be 6 literal days.
You don't have to do a blood test on the wine.
That's right. But Job 38:4 does say this. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. That's what God said to Job. You weren't there, Job, so you don't know. And that goes for us too. I'm not saying that God was saying this directly to us. He was saying it directly to Job. But God's point is taken. It also says in Deuteronomy 29:29, the secret things belong to the Lord our God. But those things that are revealed belong to us and our children. So we know the things that are revealed, but the secret things are God's. God, were there dinosaurs on the ark? I don't think we're going to get an answer that way. It's a secret thing of God. Okay, so Noah's flood, family, animals, food, and provisions, highly likely seeds. Josephus talks about Noah bringing all sorts of things onto the ark. They probably brought seeds onto the ark as well as the animals and provisions. Food for the animals, food for themselves. You know, how could he get all that together? He only had 120 years. The rain came from above, and the fountains of the deep burst forth. That's something people miss.
Yeah.
The fossils of the, what you was calling them, you were looking for a while ago.
The fossil what?
I said that brought forth the fossils of the animals that you were looking for a while ago.
Oh, the dinosaurs? The deep brought up the dinosaur bones. Yeah, to the... So... this is a massive thing for us to understand, okay? The deep here in the Greek, in the Septuagint, it's the abyss. So it sounds like maybe the ocean, and some people will point to the Mariana Trench and other things like that, bursting forth. Huge amounts of water, lava. We don't know, but if the fountains of the deep burst forth, We have no way of knowing what the pre-flood world looked like, because this is going to so mar and change the face of the earth. Catastrophic. Massively catastrophic. I mean, the rain from above, we all know what happens with that. Here in Houston, for sure.
Yeah.
Harvey, Imelda.
And we didn't get 40 days and 40 nights of it.
Right. We didn't get 40 days. It felt like it.
Yeah, I know.
My nerves were shot during... Anybody else nerves shot during Harvey? I was a wreck. To my shame, I was a wreck. I tried not to be.
PBS has this wonderful special on when the meteor hit.
Oh, yeah.
How big the meteor was and how it went over 28 miles down. I mean, the hole is more than 28 miles.
The one off of Yucatan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was on last night. It was really interesting about all this stuff and how the layers and layers and layers of stuff is all different. And what, so that's why we got these mountains around, because it got pushed up.
Yeah, there's that. Like, who knows, what was the tallest pre-flood mountain? Anybody know? Yeah, me neither.
Well, if you take a bucket of water and you throw it across the dirt, it displaces. So you can imagine what this kind of pressure would do to the
Yeah,
Well, you have
to the continents and
aquifers
everything.
and aquifers full of water that are under the earth. And all of
There's
a
the
sudden-
water table, and there's underwater lakes, and underwater, scientists even say underwater oceans.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. But here's the great difficulty. Do we know if any structures survived from the pre-flood world? It's crazy. Yeah, the ark. Who said that? That's good. He's right. Well, I better get going so we can get to that. But okay, here's the thing though. The text is not clear as to how high the water went or to what extent it went. Because the purpose of the flood is to kill all the animals and humans that have breath in their lungs that are on the earth. It says that it rose up over the mountains, the pre-flood mountains. And then it says it rose up another 15 cubits. It sounds like, okay, did it raise up 15 cubits only in total, or it rose up 15 cubits over the mountains that Noah was dealing with? Did he take soundings to see and say, oh, I know I was just over the tallest mountain and it's 15 cubits down? Maybe, I don't know. But some people say, no, it had to be 15 cubits higher than Everest. Well, Everest may have been created back then. I have no way of knowing. People are looking for, how do we have this much water?
Well, Ararat was there. Mount Ararat.
Mount Ararat was there after the fact, but yeah.
Right.
And where was he? Here's another thing. Like you said, he's in a rudderless cork, floating on the water, going wherever he's going to go to, dealing with all this geologic pressure. Could be magma, water, could be continental drift happening faster than we could imagine. It could be all sorts of things. Who knows? Some people propose that Pangea existed before the flood, and after the flood, continental drift happened. And that may be the case. I have no clue. No clue. I'm sure that scientists would have a thing or two to say about it. But here's the thing. People can over-science this, and they will say it has to be 15 cubits higher than Everest, since Everest is the tallest mountain. Well, Ararat and Everest are pretty far away from each other.
Yeah.
Okay? And we don't know the extent of where was mankind living. How far had they spread? Where were they at? What were they doing? We just don't fully understand all of that. There's a lot of mystery. Okay? So as you're watching things, and this scientist says it's impossible that there could have been a global flood because there's not enough water anywhere to support 15 cubits over Everest. Okay, the Bible isn't necessarily saying that. Okay, there's more mystery here is what I'm trying to say. All right? Because the purpose was to do as God determined, and that was to judge these people who had evil hearts all continually. So it continued for 40 days, and so did the fountains of the deep. And for 150 days, the water did not begin to subside. 150. They're going to spend over a year on the ark. Over a year. Can you imagine the family arguments that happened? Oh, go feed a giraffe. But the ark came to rest on the mountains of Urartu. of Ararat. Urartu is a people group that lived in modern-day Armenia and Turkey. It was a kingdom. At one point became a kingdom, and it encompasses many, many mountains. So for the ark to land on the mountains of Ararat, it could be any number of mountains. Okay? It really could be. Noah sent out the raven first and the 2 doves. The one dove came back with the olive leaf and then sent the dove out, and the dove never came back. And then God said it was safe to come out. So they spent over a year on that ark. The ark's location. We don't know where it rested. But what we get is a lot of good information from Josephus. He says it was in an accessible area where people lived. Because it was there in his day, he said. But it was being destroyed. The people that lived there and people that came there were cutting pieces of the ark off and selling it as magical amulets to ward off evil. So I think of all these people climbing up Ararat, getting oxygen tanks on. We got to find the ark. You know, amazing, because previously it was in a very accessible area where people could get to it without oxygen tanks. It's said to be, he said that the name of the place is the place of the descent in Greek, but the locals that lived there called it the place of the descent, and it's a place called in modern Azerbaijan called Nakhchivan. But he also said it was also near a place called Mount Baris. Anybody know where that's at? Mm-mm. Yeah, you can really chase your tail chasing this down.
Marco Polo claimed he found it.
Marco Polo found it.
He claimed he did. Said he trudged 3 days through the snow.
Okay. And he found it.
Yeah, you ought to talk to him sometime.
That's.
No, I'm serious.
He was in the snow.
I'm serious.
It was like a blizzard.
Marco Polo,
and that was the first game of Marco Polo. Because his buddy Polo was with him. They're shouting, Marco! Polo!
But he did claim he found it.
Sounds like a snow job to me.
That's good. So, the other hint that we get is from Josephus. And Josephus is quoting from pagan historians. Is that it was in the Kurdian region of Ararat. And the Kurdian region of Ararat is in southern Armenia. The Quran states that the ark rested on Mount Judi. It's spelled Kudi, but it's pronounced Judi. And Mount Judi is in the Kurdian region. And here's a picture of it. This is a terrible picture. Yeah, it's... Here's the thing, though. If 2,000 years ago they were still chopping the ark up into pieces and selling it off, and the locals that lived there knew what was going on and knew it was there, you know, just like when some area has some great economic advantage and then it's all gone. Let's say that there's an old oil field that nobody wants anymore because there's nothing left, right? If there's no more ark left, then people that live there have no reason to live there unless there are other natural resources that are conducive to creating a nice civilization. They're going to be out of there, right? And so the fact that we don't know and that they did know and that maybe even Marco Polo saw it after trudging through the snow, then it may be all gone by now. This is a big problem. It's supposed to be in an accessible area, but it's probably all gone now. So here's the 3 best solutions that people have come up with. They say it's in Mount Ararat because it says here that it rested on the mountains of Ararat. And if I drop the S in mountains, I'm left with Mountain Ararat. So the Ararat mountain, the one mountain. But the Bible doesn't say that it rested on Mount Ararat. It says it rested on the mountains of Ararat. And just because there is a mountain that is today called Ararat, named after the Urartu, the people that lived there before, doesn't mean that this is the one that the ark landed on. The other place, Nakhchivan, is here, the place of the descent. But the region of Kurdian is down here near Lake Van, which is here. Lake Van. The Kurdian region is below Lake Van, and this is Mount Judi. Okay? Which the Muslims say is there. But we can't trust the Muslims. So we have to reject that one. No, we have to go wherever the truth is. And it sounds to me like, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say I don't know where it is, but it sounds to me, this is in the Chaldean region. Chaldean is right here. And in Josephus' day, this is Greater Armenia. Actually, I have a closer picture. Mount Judy is down here. And the other fascinating thing about Mount Judy is it's very near the Tigris River.
Huh. That's interesting.
Very near the Tigris. I mean, very near. So near that, you can walk down the Tigris and find yourself in the Shinar plains, the plains of Shinar, which is fascinating. All right, last thing. You have a handout. The handout is our stories. There are hundreds and hundreds of flood stories from around the world, but these ones that I put on here are some of the best flood stories about Noah's flood from around the world. People say, it was fake, it never happened. Yeah, all the ancient cultures said it happened.
Yes, that's true.
And all the cultures on earth say that it happened. We have American Indian tribes. Just to name a few, you have stories for all of these. The Haraskin, the Skagit, Chippewa, Yellowstone, Montaganes, the Lakota, the Chitmac, all of these Indian tribes have Noah's story with their own spin, and you have copies of that. How did they get Noah's story before the white man came and told it to them? If it didn't happen. They remember. These cultures remember. The Pacific and Pacific Islanders. I love it. The ones in Australia, the Aborigines in Australia said that the white men are lying because they always knew that Noah was an Aborigine like them.
Yeah.
So how did they come up with this idea of Noah before the Europeans came and gave it to the European Christians came and forced it upon them? It's because it happened. The flood happened. Every continent on Earth, well, except for Antarctica. There are no Antarcticans that have a story because there's nobody living in Antarctica except for the scientists.
Oh, penguins.
Oh, penguins, yeah. The penguins would know. Yeah. The emperor penguin was on the ark. That's why he's the emperor.
The guy with the tuxedo on.
And here's some fascinating things. Different names of Noah from the different cultures. Just to point out a few, Chaldea, they had Noah. Chaldea's the Chaldeans right there in next to Shinar, if y'all know where that's at, near Kuwait in Iraq. The Chaldeans had Noah and his three sons, Sem, Japhet, and Chem. Africa, Tumbanat and his three sons, Oshomo, Bartimaro, and Barmao. Altaic in Asia, Nama and his three sons, Sozun-ul, Sar-ul, and Balix. Really fun one is in India. Noah's name was Manu or Satyavrata with his three sons, Sharma, Charma, and Yapeti. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, Noah's flood didn't happen though. There's no proof that there was ever a Noah's flood. Every culture on earth knows that there was a great flood. It happened, it's history. And that's it.
Our culture doesn't anymore.
Yeah,
What?
just because today's society has forgotten and they hate antiquity and ignore it, and they ignore these. I tried to show my skeptical friend this. He said, I sent it to him to read. He said, nah, there's all sorts of flood stories. This has nothing to do with Noah. Did you read it? He doesn't have to read it. He already knows. And that's the problem, isn't it?